Welcome back. You're here at number 16 to Sefer Derech Hashem with Kesher. And what are we doing today? Where did we leave off last time, I think, is the more pertinent question, and what we're going to do today. Today, we're going to carry on with what we did in the previous one, which we kind of stopped mid-flow on an idea. I'm Rabbi Mordechai Goodman, by the way, just in case you need to know, Jewish education in Manchester. And we were talking about what happens after you die. Now, we're going to talk about what happens after you die, what the function of the soul is, what the function of the body is, and why dying must be a temporary state, according to Jewish thought, according to what the Torah tells us. Okay? So that's what we're going to cover today. It's like some pretty heavy ideas. So in order to be able to get those ideas clear, we need to go through a bit of a timeline. We need a timeline. So let's get a timeline. This would be really great if we ever have some of these great infographics where we can have a graphic coming up on the screen. Now would be the time for that. But we don't have it, so you're going to have to use the power of your imagination. So here we go. According to Jewish thought and according to Jewish teachings, especially Sanhedrin, Daf Nun Vav Amud Aleph, which is 56a, which is a page in Tractate Sanhedrin, talks about the idea of 6,000 years of Jewish history. Now that 6,000 is a rounded number. It does not mean exactly 6,000, and we don't exactly know which Jewish year we're in. We roundabout know which Jewish year we're in, but Nebuchadnezzar Sancheriv changed our Jewish calendar. We don't have an exact authoritative outcome as to exactly what year we're in. That's why we can't keep Shemitah or Yovel really absolutely, that's the Jubilee years, the sabbatical years, we can't keep them bang on because we don't exactly know exactly what year we're in since the destruction of the Second Temple. Going back earlier even, before the destruction of the Second Temple, we're not really clear. But, so that's 6,000 years. You can't say, we're nearly at 5783, etc., whatever it's going to be. Yes, that's around about a couple of hundred years, etc., that we need, but we don't know the exact year. But we do know that Jewish history is going to last for approximately 6,000 years. That we've got as a very solid tradition. Now, during that time, people are going to die. Sometimes you go to a shiva, which is a Jewish gathering after a person dies. There's a 7-day rule of mourning. And people often talk about life and death when those kind of things happen. And they discuss things and they go, oh, well, let's not worry about Auntie Ethel now because right now she's in Olam Haba, which means the world to come. Let's get something straight. She's not in Olam Haba. No one is. Olam Haba is this world recreated with the evil removed. Remember I talked about restoration last time? I restore guitars, break apart a guitar, clean up every single bit, put it all back together again, make sure it's tip-top. You can do that with a piano or a harp or a trumpet. If you're going to restore a complicated instrument, whatever it is, a car, a motorbike, really people who know what they're doing, they will take apart every single component, clean it, oil it, fix it, put it back together, and get it into perfect running order. That's really what to do. So too, Olam Haba, the world to come, is this world restored and cleaned with evil removed and put back together again. So this is the key here. Life, which terminates in Olam Hazeh, this world that we're in now, is a temporary state. The only reason life was like that at all was because Adam HaRishon ate of the Eitz Torah. It's very, very important to understand. He was created immortal. We did this last time. The fact that he ate of it, Hashem said, if you eat of it, you'll become mortal. That's bad news. Now that we are mortal, we're going to need a holding zone for both components of our structure. One is the physical body, which is the study of physiology and anatomy, which is the physical body that we are. And a second is the spiritual component, which cannot be detected by physical means. Indeed, we define spirituality as things which exist but cannot be sensed or detected utilizing physical phenomena, such as scales, burettes, UV spectroscopy, or whatever it's going to be. It's something which isn't physical. It isn't bound by atoms and matter and density and things like that. You can't put it in this dimension. Doesn't mean it's not there, but it does mean it's not detectable via these terms. Now, the spiritual component of a human being is called a soul. The physical component of a human being is called a body. If they're separated, which is what we call death, and the physical body ceases to function without the input of its spiritual component. It's a very interesting idea because some of it's actually physical. Part of the soul is physical. The lower levels of the soul are actually genetically encoded. The higher elements of the soul are spiritual, something we'll get to as we go. But once the spiritual component has been severed, then you're going to need a holding zone for what you're going to do with the body, and you get in a holding zone for what you're going to do with the soul. Because we got to clean them, restore them, because we want them back together again. You only take an object to dry cleaning. You only take a clothing, if you take a coat to dry cleaning, because you want to wear it again. If you're never going to wear it again, you put it in the bin. It's like a disposable plastic apron. You don't take that to the dry cleaners. They'll be like, what are you doing? No, you just put it in the bin, you get another one. So why is it we're even bothered with this? Is because we want to use the body again. Now, it needs to rot to allow the evil to leach out of its actual being. Things that we've done with the body are negative. The only way you can fully allow that out is through the rotting process, which means we need to have a place for the body after death, and that is the concept of interring it into the ground. That is burial. So the grave is where the body goes for that period. But what are you going to do with the soul? Now remember, all this is b'diavad. All this is post facto. It was not in the original. It's not what God originally wanted. It had to be in the design as a redundancy, that it had to be there, but it wasn't what God originally wanted. He didn't want man to die at all. He didn't want man and woman to die. He didn't want that. He said, you do this, you don't do that. Everything's going to be great. It's going to be great. Just let's get on with Olam Haba immediately. It would have been that Friday. That Friday when they were created, when that Friday turned into Shabbos, into Saturday, that would have been the onset of Olam Haba. They were in Gan Eden, which means the portico of Eden. Where they need to go is Eden proper, is Eden. Eden was not accessed by them. Eden is Olam Haba. So Eden is Olam Haba. Gan Eden literally means the garden, the portico, in front of the door to Eden. Had they have been able to swipe their cards, beep, the door would have opened, security light would have opened, they'd have walked in, good to go. The thing is, just before the door opens, they get scanned. And if there's a piece of fruit in your tummy, which shouldn't be there, the door stays locked. You can't get in. Now you're going to need to take a 6,000-year detour to be able to get back into that. Now, Kodesh Baruch Hu did not want that. Hashem did not want that when he created the universe. But that is an option you're dealing when you have a free-willed being who can make their own choices to whether or not they want to play ball. And Adam Rishon didn't want to play. He wanted to do it his way. Okay, but b'vakasha. It's down to him what he wants to do. It's a real choice. God said no. He said, well, I don't care. Okay, b'vakasha. What's going to happen to the soul? What are you going to do with the soul if you're going to remove it from the body? That's like, remember, a soul is designed, it has to be attached with a body. A body and a soul without each other is like milk without a bottle. Like, where are you going to put it? It needs to go somewhere. That's his job, as we'll learn. It's for this reason that God made something called the soul world, or Olam HaNeshamos, the world of souls. This is a temporary domain which will be shut down when it's no longer needed. But we have to have it running just in case Adam would have sinned, and it did, so it's up and running. What's going on in the world? What's it for? Answer. One, it's a warehouse to keep things like that there. Two is it's a restoration facility. I'm going to have to clean up and fix up any damage done to that soul in there, so I'm going to need like a workshop. And three, it's a recharge battery facility where you plug the soul into a zone where it can recharge. Imagine an LED bulb that's very, very bright, and it's being put into an upside-down clay pot. And it's burning and burning and burning, and it wants to illuminate the pot. But the pot is no chandelier. It's one of those very kind of difficult to touch. I have an aversion to touching them. It's kind of earthenware pots, that the unglazed earthenware. People have them outside their houses with trees in, little, it's like basically a pot that's not glazed, and you touch it. I don't know, I find it very uncomfortable to the touch, you know what I mean? It's like a really weird texture. So imagine taking one of those pots, like a plant pot, turning it and putting it on a very, very powerful LED, and the LED is like zooming in there. It can't illuminate the pot, which is its job, because it's dealing with a clay pot. It should have been dealing with a 24% lead crystal glass to make a beautiful chandelier, which is why Adam Arishon's body was transparent. That's the idea, that his skin was nail. It's the Jewish idea that the nail, notice, or with an aleph means light. Spell or with an ayin, which is a conjugate. Aleph and an ayin are swappable because they're both gutturals. Or with an ayin is leather or skin. So his light ability, where the nail is transparent, where you would see the internal organs and the soul interacting with them, became opaque into this leathery, opaque material. So instead of being glass-like, allowing the neshama to radiate, it now becomes leather-like, not allowing the neshama to radiate, becoming opaque. Hence, he gave him garments of skin. After he sinned, he made him garments of skins. This is, well, we got it. This is it, yeah? We have garments of skin, which is now opaque. You cannot see through it, unlike the nail. When you look through a nail, you're actually seeing the nail bed. Nails aren't pink, right? Or whatever color you're looking at your nails, right? You're seeing straight through your nail to the nail bed underneath. And it's the color of the flesh underneath that you're... Nails themselves are basically transparent. So too, his entire guf, his entire body, was covered in keratinized nail. It was not skin as we have now. When he changed that situation, we're now dealing with a very bright LED bulb inside a clay pot, an opaque pot. And imagine you've been running that for 120 years at full blast. When you would take that pot off, you would see, you know what? You ever changed a bulb and it's kind of yellowed a bit? You can smell it and it smells a bit burnt. Do you know what I'm talking about? Like, you change an old bulb and it's like, it's clearly old. You know, it's clearly not like one out the box. You know what I'm saying? That bulb needs full restoration and recharge before it can go back into a body to do its task. So I'm going to need like a workshop where I can take bulbs apart, clean them up, respray them, put in a new element, re-screw them together, make them as good as new. Then I'll put them in like a beautiful 24% lead crystal chandelier, allow them to spark tremendously. It would just look amazing. Yeah. Well, that's after the body's been cleaned up and the neshama's been cleaned up. That's the idea of resurrection. When you put those two refined elements back together again, that's why I'd bother cleaning any of them to start with. The only point I'm going through this whole process of separation is so that I can reconnect them in a better method. That's like any restorer. I wouldn't go around breaking guitars into bits and like oiling every single screw and every piece of fret wire unless I'd planned on having a fully functioning guitar at the end, right? A complete waste of time. What are you doing? Just cleaning screws and, polishing wood. What for? I don't know. I just enjoy that. No, because I'm going to have a fully functioning instrument at the end of this. I'll fix and restore the instrument back to full playing glory. It'll be great. But it will take time. So too, the soul needs a place for it to reside so it can undergo these processes for its benefit so that we can rejoin body and soul together. And that's a Techias HaMesim, the resurrection of the dead. That has to happen. It's one of the principles of Jewish faith, that there'll be a resurrection. It's one of the 13 encoded principles. In fact, if you don't accept it, your Judaism's on the line. And the reason for that is as follows. Every mitzvah you've ever done, new point here, focus. Every mitzvah you've ever done, every commandment you've ever fulfilled is physical. There's a physical component, right? In Judaism, we never interface with spirituality directly. That's not what God wants us to do. He wants us to interface with physicality, which automatically is tracked onto spirituality, because from our system of how the code works, you're automatically interfacing spirituality when you shuffle around physicality. Something physical is an outcome of a code, a spiritual code behind it. So if I move something around, I'm moving something through the dimension of space and time, then I'm automatically attaching it to the spiritual content of what space and time was encoded by upstairs. I don't need to directly interface with spirituality. It's fine. I don't need to... Christians and Muslims and all these... When they decide they're going to go really, really spiritual, they tend to go ascetic and completely give up physicality. It's all or nothing. If you really want to go spiritual, you have to literally divest. The Jains even take off their clothes, because then you've got access to clothing, and the feeling of the clothing against the skin draws you down into physicality. Buddhists, to a certain extent, do that as well. Yellow Hat Buddhism does that to a certain extent. To us, that's an anathema. It's the very physical world God created in order for us to interface with that is how we get close to Him. That's why He made it. It's not a trap. It's an exam room. You have to utilize it correctly. You know what I'm saying? It's that, those are the tools that He's giving you. It's a very important idea for Jewish thought, which means every mitzvah, every commandment you've ever fulfilled had a physical component. Think of any yontif, think of any mitzvah. That's the first. Purim, you think of a grogger, a Megillah, a mask, Pesach, maybe think of flatbreads, matzahs. Sukkot, you think of booths and plants. Shavuos, you maybe think of cheesecake. Although you probably should be thinking of the Torah, it's probably cheesecake. I don't know, like anything. Tish B'Av, you're probably thinking of sandals and not eating. Yom Kippur, you probably think of a kittel and not eating, the fast. Like davening or praying, things like that. Everything's physical. We have to interface with something physical. We have to do something. What we do, what we don't do, where we go, what we don't do, what we eat, what we don't do, a certain ritual we have to fulfill, whatever it is. It's always physical. If God were only to pay you in spiritual money, He'd be shortchanging you. If a man puts on tefillin, God has to pay the arm and the skull that had the tefillin on him. These are the Jewish phylacteries, the prayer boxes that we wear, right? The leather boxes. Well, the arm and the skull need payment, as well as the soul, which innovated the body to do that. The body says, excuse me, I would never have done something so bizarre unless it was a mitzvah to do so. And what about the fact that I really would like a steak cooked in butter? But I can't have that because it is not in line with the laws of Jewish dietary laws. So I've withheld that from myself. So my stomach, my palate, my tongue, all those elements need a payoff if I've had a problem withholding myself from that. Same idea. God's got to give you a physical and a spiritual component to this reward, to this closeness that he's going to give you. Otherwise he's shortchanging you. And he can't shortchange you because he's perfect. It all comes back to that. It all goes back to page 31 and 35, right? Everything comes back to this one idea. That there's one being who's perfect. He doesn't do things by halves. He only does it the right way. Because of that, he has to pay you in physical terms. Physical terms, which means you need a physical world, Olam Haba, the world to come, this world recreated or restored without evil in. And he needs to give you spiritual return as well, which will happen in Olam Haba as well, as one joint thing. In the way that you did it. Body and soul together did the mitzvah. Body and soul together get rewarded. You've got to be alive in a physical form. But what about the fact that I can't do that because I've still got evil? Okay, so we'll have the death process now because of Adam. We'll split apart the body and the soul. We'll let the body leach out its evil and we'll let the soul leach out its evil, both in zones which are correct for them. We'll restore them and then we'll bring them back together again so that I can give of my perfect good to another. I want to give of myself to another perfectly. That's the whole protocol of why he made this system. So he's got to do that. He's got to. By dint of his perfection. He has no... What options has he got? He's got no options but to do it the right way. He can't fail and he can't get it wrong. So if there's no other way to do it. That's why we need a holding zone for the soul post-death, prior to resurrection, and then Olam Haba, the world to come. That means when someone dies, they don't go to the world to come. Their body stays very much on this planet. Their soul rescinds to somewhere, to a spiritual zone, which is where ushered from, where it has to undergo very significant processes in order to ready it for its next stage. Much like a caterpillar has to go through a chrysalis. It's got to go through the chrysalis stage where it melts down, reorganizes itself, is rebuilt, and then hatches as a butterfly. This metamorphosis is a completely natural outcome. Again, it's backwards. It shouldn't have happened. This is bidi evad. This is not what we were originally designed for as a species. God said, I don't want to have to do this for you. It's not the ultimate way you can do it, but I have to give you the option to say yes or no. Otherwise, you don't have free will. If you don't have free will, you don't have justification. You won't feel good about it. And if you don't have justification, then the reward that I'm going to give you isn't perfect because you won't feel as if you're the master of it. You won't feel justified. I've got to give you the option. Well, you want to give me the option, it comes at a risk. Yeah. It's a gamble. It's a gamble. Because I'm dealing with someone, a human being, who is a free-willed being, who may just completely reject what I've got to say. Wow. We did a lot of material. Probably time to stop, rewind, go back over that. There was a lot of material in there. So what we're going to do, we're going to stop there, and next time we're going to go inside on this data and see what the actual Sefer has to say about it, and then discuss the role of the body and the role of the soul. If you've made it this far, you've done great. I'm really, really glad that you're here. Thank you so much for taking your time, and I look forward to seeing you next time. Join us then.